Morris Arking came to United States directly from Halab 200 years ago, and
It was 250.
and sitting with Morris is listening to what's happening in Halab yesterday.
Can I stay?
You are more than right.
Thank you, Rabbi. Okay, so there was one Haggadah that was actually printed in Halab. It was printed in Halab in 1897. I have a Xerox copy of the actual printing, the original printing, which we could pass around, and you can take a look at it. This 1897 printing was reprinted recently in Eretz Yisrael. There's an Aleppo Heritage Center in Tel Aviv, and they've been reprinting a lot of our traditional works, and one of that they printed is the Haggadah, and they made it very colorful. It's good for children as well. It's in Tel Aviv, on Aharonson Street. Yeah, you could. It'll be in the. You can see the address in there. Okay, so I'm going to speak a little bit about minhagim, customs that are particular to Syria and the Haggadah itself, as well as mix it in with general halachot, which are useful for everyone when they go to the Haggadah on the night of Pesach.
Moshe is missing pages, right?
It is not missing pages.
No, finish with
it's
Nishmat.
Finish with Nishmat.
It's the entire Haggadah. Should have it here. With Nishmat and the Berakah.
מלך מעולל בתשבחות, אמן.
And then
we got for the Peri Gefe.
Yeah, it's the entire Haggadah. I Xeroxed it myself in the Hebrew University.
No, yeah. That's the Syrian thing.
Right. So the first thing I want to bring out is if you go on the first page of the Haggadah, it tells you how to set up the Haggadah plate. And basically, this is not only particular to Halab, this is all the Middle Eastern communities in our times are setting it up based on the Arizal. It'll be Yitzhak Luria, the master of Kabbalah from the 16th century. So what I want to discuss is particular to Halab, the way we set up the plate, is if you look at the setup, there's a section in the middle called Maror, and a section on the bottom called Hazeret. Now we know that Hazeret is a type of Maror, right? Right, so Hazeret is a type of maror. It's not only a type of maror, it's the best type of maror. It's the romaine lettuce. So the Mishnah, Masechet Pesachim, gives you 5 options to use for maror, and they listed in a specific order, which means that the first one on the list, if you can get that, use that. If you couldn't get the first one, go to the second one, third, fourth, and so on and so forth. So the first one is Hazeret. We explained that it's romaine lettuce. It's very available today. Everybody has romaine lettuce. So there are many Sephardic communities in Eretz Yisrael, the Iraqis and similar communities, that they take romaine lettuce, they put some in the middle for maror, and they take the same romaine lettuce and they put it on the bottom of the plate for hazeret, and that's it. And when they make alachilat maror, they have the romaine lettuce because that's all they have on the plate. But the Halabi custom is different. Growing up in the community, it's not only in my house, all the homes, we have 2 types of lettuce on the plate. So you have romaine lettuce, which is the main one, and then you have a secondary lettuce, and it depends on your family's custom. Many use escarole. My house used chicory. Others use endives. It doesn't matter exactly what it is. There's another lettuce. So what's a little confusing is that since the romaine is the hazeret, that's its translation. Even though we eat it from maror, we put it in the hazeret section. So it goes on the bottom.
But only romaine should be for the chazeret.
That goes in that section on the bottom, right?
Somewhere I read that escarole was a chazeret, and I said we never saw escarole.
The escarole goes in the middle section of the plate that says maror, right? Right. So well, the endives are very clean.
I use that.
Right. Okay. So
But the chazeret is only romaine.
that's romaine. It goes on the bottom, and the other lettuce, whatever your family custom is, it goes in the middle section. So it just gets a little more confusing because when you get up to the maror and you make alachilat maror, you're taking an ounce of the hazeret, the bottom lettuce, right? And that's what we use for alachilat maror. And the middle lettuce comes when you make the sandwich. When you make the sandwich, we mix the 2 kinds. We mix some from the bottom section, from the romaine, with the other lettuce. So together there's an ounce. You can take half an ounce of romaine, half an ounce of escarole, or whatever your other lettuce is, and that's used for the sandwich. So that's the custom of halab. That's our tradition.
Maror is on what?
On the romaine lettuce.
On the romaine, even though you're calling chazeret on the truck.
Right.
That's the one
For
you use.
alachilat maror
Okay.
by itself. That's it. That's the main one. That's alachilat maror. The sandwich gets 2. Okay, so that's that subject. So if you look through the Haggadah, there are some interesting word versions. So one of the words that's always a debate amongst the different communities is one of the first words when you about to start the Magid, and that's how do you say halach ma'anya? So some say ha, some say he. Our custom is to say kehalach ma'anya, right? So and it's printed in the Haggadah, and the truth is, as a kid when we were growing up, we didn't even have Syrian Haggadot. They really weren't available. We were having what we had Ashkenazic. Maybe we had one Syrian Haggadah that came out in the 70s, but we didn't have so right. So my father would start Keha, and I would ask him, "Why are you starting Keha?" And he didn't really. Okay, say Ha, whatever you want to say. But later, when I found I went to the Hebrew University in the 1980s, and I xeroxed it. I said, "Okay, that's why my father was saying Keha all these years, because that was the tradition of Halab." So that's one of the things that's particular. There are a few other words. We say afikomin, which is not common amongst all Sephardim. There are those that say afikoman, some say afikomen. Sometimes even when I'm teaching in the community, I say afikomin. People come and they question me about it. It's in this Haggadah we have afikomin, and one other one that's particular is we don't say. When we talk about the four sons, we don't say she'eno yodea lish'ol, it says she'eno yodea lish'al. Right? So this is all particular to Halab, it's all in the Haggadah. We don't say vihi she'amda. I know in school we had it with Ashkenazim, you sing a song, vihi she'amda, vihi she'amda, we say hi she'amda. So, Mishalot Tam is not in here, but it's definitely our custom. Right? It's absolutely our custom. It's like a Torah Sheba'al Peh.
If I can have the custom to do it as a woman, all my kids do it, my girls do it also.
Right.
I'm uncomfortable doing it. Is there a problem?
Well, you're not obligated to do it.
Wherever he's going, I'm coming with him anyway.
Right, yeah. You're not obligated.
They're not on the table. There should be a kitchen.
He's trying to get rid of me.
Bad joke.
So one of the halachot that I want to discuss, which is also our minhag, and that's the fact that we apply the halachic rule of shomea ke'oneh throughout the Haggadah. What's shomea ke'oneh? Shomea, when you hear something, ke'oneh, it's like you're saying it yourself. So we practice this all year round. When we have kiddush, everybody's around the table, the head of the household makes kiddush. It doesn't matter who else is there. You could have a great rabbi and all his sons are great rabbis, and they don't all say their own kiddush. It's not that the head of the household says kiddush for everybody because nobody knows how to say kiddush. Even if everybody went to school and they're educated and they all make kiddush in their own homes, we still say shomea ke'oneh. And why do we say shomea ke'oneh? Maybe it's better for everyone to say their own kiddush. Why should you do it with another? Because the Achamim apply the rule of Birob Am Hadrat Melech. When everybody gets together and does a mitzvah in unison, this is greater honor for the king, for Borei Olam. So it applies to Kiddush, even though on Pesach everyone has their own cup of wine, right? Everyone could technically lift their wine and make their own Kiddush. We say Shomea Ke'oneh. Okay, right. So we're talking now about the customs that are particular to our community. So we say Shomea Ke'oneh, we say Birov Am Hadrat Melech. Usually we do that for the karpas. That our household says Poreh Pri Adama. Everyone says Amen. Now, in order for it to work, the head of the household has to have everybody in mind. He has to know that he's having everybody in mind. And the people that are listening also have to have it in mind. So there has to be a consciousness between the oneh and the shomea, between the one who's making the beracha and those that are listening. And Hakamat Yosef also writes that we say shomea ke'oneh for the Magid section, for the entire Haggadah section. So it's not necessary for everybody at the table to physically be reading the Haggadah, as long as you're hearing it from somebody that's obligated to in the mitzvah. So like the head of the household is saying it, he says it, and you listen. If you want to go around the table and give people turns to read, that's also, it's customary to give people turns to read. So sometimes you might get to a child and the child's going to read, he's not hayab. In such a case, you should read that piece. Everyone should read that piece in a low voice to themselves because they're not fulfilling their obligation to the child. What about a woman reading on behalf of the men? You were talking about, you don't want to say Mishad Tam, but some of the women probably want to read a paragraph. If they're going around, they want to read a paragraph. So Hakamat Yosef brings a difference of opinion amongst the poskim about whether women are actually obligated in the Haggadah from the Torah, or perhaps they're only obligated from the rabbis. And the reason for this is that usually when we have a positive commandment that's governed by time, we say that the women are exempt. Of course, they still get reward for practicing the mitzvah, but they're exempt if they don't want to do it or they can't do it or something came up. They're not absolutely obligated to do it. When it comes to the mitzvot of Pesach, the Gemara says, "Af hen hayu be'oto hanes." They were included in the miracle, so they're obligated in the mitzvot. So some take that to mean from the Torah, "Af hen hayu be'oto hanes," requires them obligates them to perform these mitzvot from the Torah. While others say, no, this is a rabbinic concept. The rabbis obligated them because they were included in the miracle. So it's a mahloket between these poskim and those poskim. So to begin with, a man should fulfill it through a man. But Hakam Odia Yosef does write that if a woman read the Haggadah on behalf of a man, he's speaking about even if she read the entire Haggadah on behalf of a man, if it was done, he fulfills his obligation, he's not obligated to read it again. So if a woman's reading, if you want to be mahmir and fulfill your obligation according to all the authorities, you could read that paragraph. But if not, ma'akad hadin, according to the law, you fulfill your obligation. So there's another point that I want to discuss, and that's the eating of the zeroah. So there are different customs. I didn't expect so many people. I didn't know how many people were coming. I made a few copies. We could distribute some of them around. Maybe some of you will share. But the Mishnah Masechet Pesachim writes that a place that has the custom to eat roasted meat eats roasted meat. A place that has a custom not to eat roasted meat doesn't eat roasted meat. We're talking about the nights of the Haggadah, the first 2 nights. Right, so we're gonna get to that. So, what is the reason why why would there be a place that doesn't eat roasted meat on the night of Pesach? So the reason is that, as you know from the Torah, there's a mitzvah to eat the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach has to be roasted; it can't be boiled. So we don't want to appear as if we're eating sacrificial meat that was not offered in the Beit HaMikdash, right? Because that's a grave sin. So we don't want to create any type of appearance or false impression that we're eating the Korban Pesach in our times that we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. So therefore there were places that went so far, and it's recorded in the Mishnah, these places went so far as not to make any roasted meat whatsoever. And many communities still today don't make roasted meat on the night of Pesach. They make roast, it's not roast. They don't just bake it, there has to be some water in the process. They don't baked chicken, they have to boil it at some point, right? All the food that's meat or something that's normally requires slaughtering, there are communities, many Ashkenazi communities, that don't eat roasted. Other places eat roasted. So the question is going to be, what was our tradition? Is our custom to eat roasted meat or not to eat roasted meat? So Hakam Abraham Hamway in the 1870s, he has an entire mahzor for Pesach and Shavuot called Bet HaBehira, and including in the prayers, he includes the entire Haggadah with halachot, with minhagim. I think you have one right there, right? It's right here. So when he gets up to the Shulchan Aruch section, it's been reprinted recently in the 1980s. When he gets up to the Shulchan Aruch section, he says, Minhag Arseinu Aram Soba is to eat roasted meat. So you don't have to ask, can I cook this? Can I cook it this way? Do I have to boil it? There is you can make any roasted meats. So now the question is, what about the zeroah itself? Because there are places, Hawajah quotes certain authorities that say, even in a place that has the custom to eat roasted meats, you shouldn't eat the roasted zeroah. Why? Because the zeroah, that's really particular to the korban. Okay, so if I'm having a piece of chicken that's just with my meal, doesn't appear to be like anything to do with the korban. But now I put meat in memory of Korban Pesach and I roasted it, I shouldn't eat it. So there are communities that differentiate between the zeroah, even though they eat other roasted meat. We're going to get to that. Let's first get to if we can eat it first. Hakam Abraham Hamway says that in Halab they did not differentiate. You eat roasted meat and you eat the roasted zeroah. So we understand from him that the custom that many people have in our times to boil it first is not required, right? And he's not the only source. We have Eretz Hayim, Rabbi Hayim and Ashisit Tehon, and the books. It wasn't only the customs of Halab. He was talking about the customs in Eretz Yisrael. It was printed in 1908, and he also writes that we don't differentiate between the zeroah and the shank bone and other roasted meat. Our custom is to eat roasted meat and to eat the roasted shank bone. We see this also attributed to the custom of Eretz Yisrael by Keter Shem Tov. Rabbi Shem Tov Gagin wrote 7 volumes of the customs of all the Sephardim. Not only does he write the customs, he brings detailed reasons and sources about it in his footnotes. So there he also said that we see from here that the Minhag in Eretz Yisrael is to eat roasted meats because we saw they were eating the roasted zeroah. So there's nothing more of a proof than that. So our custom is to eat roasted meats, to eat the roasted zeroah. It's not necessary to boil it. Where did boiling the zeroah come from? What's the origin of such a concept? So the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim talks about having a food in memory of the Korban Pesach. There's different suggestions about what you should have. The custom is to, according to Maran, is to have roasted meat. So there are different opinions about what to do with this roasted meat. There are authorities that say you have to eat it. There are authorities that say the Gemara never intended you to eat it. You don't have to eat it. Just roast it and leave it on the plate. So there are Ashkenazic authorities that understood the Gemara that you have to eat the meat that was put on the plate in memory of the Korban Pesach. But then in their places they didn't eat roasted meats. So in order to be able to eat that meat, they boiled it, right? But at our place, we eat roasted meat, so there is no reason for us to boil the shank bone.
Doing something for 20 years, you're saying you don't have to do it anymore?
But we know already from documented sources, and they're not going that long ago. I'm not going back 800 years or 500 years. We're going back to 1870, to 1908, to 1930. It's in your parents' lifetime, in your grandparents' lifetime, the rabbis that were living at that time documented the custom, and we see it. I understand if we have a custom for 400 or 500 years, and then you say, oh, but Harambam wrote something different. That was 800 years ago, so maybe it evolved. But this didn't have enough time to evolve. We're talking about the early 19th century, the late 19th century and the early 20th century. The rabbis living at that time are giving their testimony about our communities, about Halab, about Eretz Yisrael, and Halab, their proximity to each other in this area. And it's not only the Syrians, it's the Halabis, the Shamis, the Egyptians, the Lebanese, all the Jews that are living in our community, their origin of countries, they all eat the zerah on the night of Pesach, and they don't have a problem whether they're roasting it.
Why don't we point it when we're doing the Haggadah?
Okay, so you don't want to point to, you don't want to say this is the Pesach shehayu avotenu. But Joey asks, can we say Zecher the Korban Pesach? Right. So in Halab there were 2 customs. There were families that ate it without saying Zecher the Korban Pesach. Like you don't point at it. We don't want to make too much of it that it's like the Korban. But there are other families that says Zecher the Korban Pesach. Why? Because now you're emphasizing it's just a remembrance. It's a Zecher ve'alma. Like when you give money for Mahasit HaShekel. Kamadia Yosef says you have to say it Zecher the Mahasit HaShekel. Because if you call it the actual Mahasit HaShekel belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, and you can't use it for the Beit Knesset. You can't use it for poor people. You have to wait until you build the Beit HaMikdash. You have to keep it, bury it, or whatever you have to do with it. So therefore, we emphasize that it's only Zecher of Mahazit Shekel. It's not the actual one. And those families that say Zecher the Korban Pesach are just emphasizing that it's just a Zecher. Others don't say anything. Each family according to his custom.